Welcome, everybody. We are live today, so listen, get ready to send in your questions, too. Special guest joining me right now is John Howler, all the way from the very warm part of the United States of America known as Ohio. It's super warm out there, isn't it, John?
It's awful. It's cold. It's dark. I'm ready. I'm done with winter.
And it just started. Actually,
technically, it doesn't start for 2 weeks.
Yeah, the first day of winter is like, what, 21st or 22nd, something like that?
Yeah, that does mean that the days will get longer. I mean, it's dark at 4:30. It's
cold.
Today we've had these really unusual days for a while here. It's like the same temperature for 20 hours in a row. I've never seen this before. It happened this summer. And today it's like it was 32 when I went to bed last night, and it's like 30 degrees now, and but it's supposed to be 13 tomorrow night. So
I was complaining because it was only 72 out here today.
So yeah, sorry for your suffering.
It's going to drop down to in the 50s tomorrow. I can't handle that.
Well, it's been 70 here. It's been 13 degrees for each of the last 6 hours. So 6 times 13 is about 70.
It's cold. Okay, John, let's get rolling with stuff that people actually want to hear from us about. So we're gonna talk about Syria. Big news. IDF destroys 80% of Syrian military capabilities. The IDF has made very impressive inroads into Syria. You look at all of these different dynamics that are going on. Putin was apparently given $135 billion from Assad. Did you see that?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay, well, yeah, $135 billion in. Let me pull up that story for you because it is definitely.
Where's that at?
I'm going to pull it up for you right now. Where did that story go? Wouldn't you know? I had it a few minutes ago, and now I can't find that story. Give me just a second. I'm going to get it since we got everybody on here live. Here it is. It is from the New Voice of Ukraine. Ousted Syrian dictator Assad smuggled $135 billion to Russia. Wow. Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad transferred $135 billion to Russia. Former intelligence officer of Assad's toppled regime, Khalid Bey, told Turkish newspaper on December 10th. That'd be yesterday. Bey stated that the funds were smuggled out of Syria. However, he did not provide details on the mechanisms used to transfer such a substantial amount. He also described a conflict between pro-Russian and pro-Iranian units in Assad's military. So very interesting, isn't it, as we see these different things that are developing?
Well, this is what's been kind of the interesting thing to watch here in Syria. If you want to go back, it's hard to believe that the grim beeper attacks weren't even 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And look at everything that's happened since. And so I think that a lot of what unfolded here was the result of Israel's, I don't think I would say anything other than Israel's success in taking out a large chunk of Hamas, still not done, neutralizing Hezbollah. Tom, you remember when we first started talking about Gaza and Lebanon, our thought was, and I think it was a reasonable thought, that Israel could lose 20,000 soldiers.
I remember. Yep.
I mean, and all the security experts were saying that. And we were talking about 25,000 dead civilians. And so what's happened, they've had about 50 soldiers killed in Lebanon. And then about, half of them died on October 7th of 2023. The total dead are under 850 IDF. Nobody expected that. Hamas has lost 20,000. Hezbollah has lost probably at least 4,000. The entire leadership, command, control structure has been decimated. Hezbollah has been decimated financially. And I think it was that, and then Israel had that amazing attack a little over a month ago where they sent 120 fighter jets over to Iran. They took out air defense in Syria and Iraq, then took out the air defenses in Iran, and just pretty much did whatever they want, sending the message. And so the result of all this is that Iran looks really, really weak. And I think now we can have a long discussion about who's behind these jihadis. It's clear there's no, I really object to these media reports that sort of describe them as a ragtag bunch of rebels. These guys are highly organized, highly structured. They have spent years putting in place a command and control structure that's very sophisticated from a modern military standpoint. And there's pretty good evidence that they've been getting fairly sophisticated drone knowledge and drones from Turkey. And I've also heard Ukraine. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's Ukraine, because it's pretty clear that in the Ukrainian war, Russia has been importing Syrians through the remnants of the Wagner group, Syrians to Ukraine, and also guys from like Sudan and Libya to Ukraine to fight in the war there. And then they brought in about, from what I hear, 30,000 North Koreans, because Russia, you know, it's the war's gone on for almost 3 years. Everybody, all these great pro-Russian people were telling us that this was going to be over in 2 weeks. And it's not. I don't think Ukraine's going to win, by the way, but they've, with the help of the West, they've been able to kind of hold off some of what Russia's doing. And you've got probably between Russia and Ukraine, you've got 1 million military casualties, you know, dead and wounded. So anyway, so Iran looked weak. Jihadis were ready to go. And they went, and the speed at which they went across Syria, though, was absolutely shocking. I don't remember the last time you and I talked on your program. Was it a week ago?
It was a week ago, yep.
Okay, so we were sort of talking about, oh, yeah, you know, the rebels are starting to take over territory. And then it got a little bit static for a few days. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they took the whole country. And so today you have just a little enclave along the coast where the Russian air base at near Latakia and the Russian naval base at Tartus are still on the control maps. It's still red, which means it's Syrian or non-rebel controlled now. The rest of the country is completely controlled by the rebel forces.
Well, I want to ask you about that a little bit more, the Sunni influence of what's going to happen with Syria, and also Israel is even just having incredible success, as Israel has made huge inroads also in Syria, taking out chemical and weapons depots, and also biological weapon depots, it appears too. So all of these lies in the past that Syria is going to give their chemical weapons over to Russia for disposal. Listen, that never happened. Anybody who's paying attention knew it never happened. But Israel is progressing. You start throwing in Bill Salas's Psalm 83 possibilities and looking at what's happened. And John, and think of this also. And don't forget, everybody, send in your questions and put the word question in all caps so we can read them quickly and get to your question. But send them in because this is live. But John, we think, okay, think about the pagers, the walkie-talkies, the success Israel has had in Gaza, the success in Lebanon, everything you just outlined, the fact that Syria is going through this, Israel is making incredible inroads, the success that Israel had with God's help with both of the missile attacks, the one in April and then the one just a couple of months ago, coming against Israel when Iran was trying to destroy Israel. Iran was just totally humiliated in that. And Israel is having victory after victory. And then I look at Zechariah chapter 12, John, and it's just these words. To me, they're so fascinating. And again, I don't think this Zechariah chapter 12 prophecy will be fulfilled until the future. But like you say, John, prophecy is pattern. And this is what God says. The governors of Judah in verse 5 shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength, and the Lord of hosts their God. In that day I will make the governors of Judah like a fire pan, and the woodpile like a fiery torch in the sheaves. They shall devour all the surrounding peoples on the right hand and on the left, but Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, Jerusalem. The Lord will save the tents of Judah first, so that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall not become greater than that of Judah. In that day, the Lord will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. The one who is feeble among them in that day shall be like David, and the house of David shall be like God, the angel of the Lord before them. In that day I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. But I find this interesting. God says in that day, it's basically the people who are fighting are going to be like David was against Goliath. It's going to look impossible, and God says, I'm going to give them victory. Again, everybody, I am not saying this is fulfilled. Now, I don't believe it is. But like you say, John, prophecy is pattern. We are watching this. It is remarkable. No matter what is going on in Syria, we know what the Bible says for how it's going to end. But I mean, I look at this, I think of Bill Salas in Psalm 83. Israel is clearly just got Gaza in their hands. Lebanon, now things are happening in Syria because of the enemies. Israel is making incredible inroads there, destroying so much, taking over cities also. We live in amazing days, but I mean, what do you make of this? Israel's having this success at the same time, the rebels are there, and then we can talk about what you see coming next for Syria.
Okay, two things. First of all, Israel's had incredible success in Syria. They are they've completely decimated what was the Syrian army. Missiles, chemical weapons stores, they sunk every ship and missile and everything that they had in their port, the Syrian Navy. It's on an order of magnitude way beyond what they were able to do in the 67 and 73 wars combined. They took out the entire Air Force of Syria. I mean, Syria did have an Air Force. Now, the only thing that I haven't really got a good handle on is what's happened to the Russian assets there. Now, a lot of Russian assets have been withdrawn because of the Ukraine war. Russia's been there for about 10 years. They withdrew some of their air defense systems up to Ukraine because they needed them in Ukraine and Russia. At its peak, I was reading it a little bit and looking at some of the documents they found. Russia had at most 62,000 men there and probably way under 5,000 in the recent time. The Syrian army just completely collapsed. Now, that's led to some, I'll call them conspiracy theories. You know, conspiracy theories are just ideas that are waiting for the facts to catch up to them these days. But
true.
You know, one conspiracy theory is Russia's laying a trap for everybody, that they're faking a withdrawal, they're faking Assad leaving, and everybody's going to be drawn in there and think we've got this place, we're in charge now, and then Russia's going to come back in with a vengeance. And the answer is, I don't know that. Let me bring up a biblical thing that somebody suggested to me today. Do you know that, the Bible has this principle about the law of first mention. So if you want to learn about what love really means in Scripture, go to find the first time that it's mentioned. Here's an interesting tidbit. The first time that Jerusalem and Damascus are mentioned is in the same chapter of the Bible. Genesis chapter 14, in the story of Abraham going to rescue the hostages that were taken by the king up north. And I just find that interesting. And that's where we're also introduced to this guy named Melchizedek. You've been to the Melchizedek temple. Some of the Jewish tradition says that Melchizedek was actually Shem, who would have been alive at the time of Abraham, and that's who Abraham went to bring a sacrifice tribute tithe to in Jerusalem. So Melchizedek was actually Shem, the son of Noah. And we know, and by the way, Abraham on the Jewish calendar was born in 1948 BC. And that's kind of an interesting parallel.
That's really fascinating. All of that.
The old saying is coincidence is not a kosher word. It just seems to happen a lot. So that I was just looking at that today. Somebody had prompted me to look at that. So anyway, we just live in an amazing time where these things are happening really quickly. Is this, and then what's the follow on going to be? What's coming? Believe me, I know we said this when we talked a week ago. I didn't have Syria completely falling on my end time bingo card for last week.
I didn't either. You know what I did have on my bingo card, but we haven't seen it yet, is Isaiah chapter 17 and Damascus being destroyed, which I have two questions on that, John. The first one comes from Bobby Munt, which we'll get to first. Paula T., I see your question about Isaiah 17 and Jeremiah 49. We'll get to that too. But Bobby Munt says this: what will constitute completion of Isaiah chapter 17, verse 1? Well, we know when you get to the last verse of Isaiah chapter 17, Bobby, that Damascus is destroyed in the night. In the evening, there's trouble. In the morning, she is no more. He is no more. It's completely wiped out. So it's not what's happening now. What's happening now is a regime change. You have the rebels coming in. And the fact, John, that this is my opinion, and I get that not all of my colleagues agree with me. I believe Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus, is still future prophecy. And the fact that so many people are saying the city of Damascus is being taken over is proof Damascus hasn't been destroyed like the Bible says it's going to be destroyed. So, Bobby, what constitutes the completion of Isaiah 17 is verse 14. It'll be destroyed in the night. One night, completely obliterated. All of a sudden, you're going to wake up and she is no more. That's what constitutes that. John, do you have anything you want to share on that?
Yeah, I'm leaning more and more towards the idea that Isaiah 17 is sort of part of the Armageddon thing. And there is a passage in there, it talks about it, and that day shall man look to his maker, and his eye shall have respect to the Holy One of Israel. So there's a lot more to Isaiah 17 than just we always want to stop at Isaiah 17:1. And I think sometimes we sort of have this default mode that we want to be able to say this is that which was prophesied. And I see some, to be honest with you, some really bad attempts to shoehorn fulfillment into some of these Bible passages. It's really, I don't think it's helpful to do that. So I think we need to be open to a lot of different ways in which this will play out. But, it talks about Ephraim, the area of Ephraim, northern Israel, and that type of thing. The fortress shall also cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus, and the remnant of Syria. The cities of Aor are forsaken, they shall be for flocks, which shall lie down, and none of them shall make afraid. And then you have I think somebody else had a question about Isaiah 49.
So, what it is, and I think Bill Salas.
Or Jeremiah 49.
Bill Salas does an excellent job on it, I believe. This question is from Paula T., but it ties in with Isaiah 17. What's the difference between Isaiah 17, verse 1 through 14, which is the destruction of Damascus, and Jeremiah 49, verse 23 through 27, which is also about Damascus? Verse 23 of Jeremiah 49 says, against Damascus, Hamath and Arpad are shamed, for they have heard bad news. They are faint-hearted. There's trouble on the sea. It cannot be quiet. Damascus has grown feeble. She turns to flee, and fear has seized her. Anguish and sorrows have taken her like a woman in labor. Why is the city of praise not deserted, the city of my joy? Therefore, her young men shall fall in her streets, and all the men of war shall be cut off in that day, says the Lord of hosts. I will kindle a fire in the wall of Damascus, and it shall consume the palaces of Ben-Hadad. So they're saying, what's the difference between Isaiah 17 and Jeremiah 49 regarding Damascus? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that we're sort of at this stage. I talk about this verse all the time, and I think it talks about Daniel and told to seal up the book till the time of the end. And in the end, the wise will understand and instruct many. And I'm not sure we're there where we can say for sure this is that. We certainly see a lot of these things coming about. And I don't remember, I had a program with Olivier last week too, so I kind of lose track of who I've said what to. And somebody said, sometimes it's just a way of describing it. You see a car with headlights, and it's a car with headlights, but you see a car with taillights, and it might be the same car. You're just looking at it from a little bit different perspective after it's gone by. So it's still a car. So I think that's kind of a picture of what we're going to see. Maybe sometimes these things will be a little bit easier to see in hindsight. But I'm just telling you, the images that I'm seeing coming out of what's going on in Syria, anybody who thinks that these guys that are coming in there, this is a good thing that Assad fell, I'm not convinced of that. I don't think, and they're still trying to get into some of the lower levels of these prisons that Assad had set up, and it's medieval. I'll tell you what it's like. It's like you wonder with the way Assad tortured these people, if he had spent time in the Assyrian rooms at the British Library when he lived in London, where he met his wife. I mean, the cruelty that is on display there. But now I'm watching videos of these Hamas guys, or not Hamas, but these jihadis coming in HST and just executing old Syrian soldiers or government people on the street. Now they're working with some of them, but others, they're just shooting them on the street, executing them, slaughtering them. And I'm looking at a picture that's currently up at the New York Times. It's a picture of a very beautiful mausoleum. In the middle of the mausoleum is a casket on fire. It's the tomb of Hafez al-Assad, Bashar Assad's father. They're burning his body. And that's very, very symbolic.
I'm looking at all of these different things that are taking place, and it's almost an awe-inspiring thing. I'm not saying in a good way, but to watch what's developing and trying to say, okay, we know how it's going to end. Like you said, the headlights or the taillights, it's a car either way. I love that illustration. And this is the same thing I would caution anybody on. I believe Damascus is in the future. I don't know when. I personally believe it's before Ezekiel 38. That's my take. John, you just put maybe a different time frame on it, a little bit later, towards time of Armageddon. May very well be. Bill Salas does a great job on Isaiah chapter 49, which was part of what the question was about, Damascus and of Isaiah 17 and Isaiah chapter, or Jeremiah chapter 49, excuse me. So when you look at these different things, I don't think these things are fulfilled yet either. And I think we need to understand the fulfillment of the prophecies. Most of them aren't going to be fulfilled until the tribulation. At that, the majority of them until the second half of the tribulation. And then even beyond that, you have the majority of them, especially regarding Israel, that get fulfilled actually in the millennial kingdom when Jesus returns. But what we see is, as you say, John, prophecy is pattern. So we're watching Damascus. When you read Jeremiah 49, verses 23 through 27 right now, and you look what's happening in Damascus, what you just said of burning Assad's, his father's body, the symbolic part, of course he's dead, but you look at Jeremiah 49, you go, is that happening now? I don't think we could say that's happening now. I certainly wouldn't say it. Maybe it is, but it's going to happen for certain sometime that I would say. Just like also in Jeremiah 49, John, you've done this a lot with Bill Salas, you've spoken to him many times, but he points out with Elam, and you're really equating it with Iran or parts of Iran. And in there, Jeremiah 49, verse 38, God says, I will set up my throne in Elam, and I will destroy from there the king and the princes, says the Lord. But it shall come to pass in the latter days, I'll bring back the captives of Elam, says the Lord. And it gives an idea that the people of Iran are going to be scattered but brought back, and God says, I'll set up my throne there. We know the throne's in Jerusalem, but he also says that. So it's really fascinating to watch everything take place. And then, John, we throw in Isaiah 19, and what happens? We know that Egypt and Assyria, according to Isaiah chapter 19, beginning in verse 19, because of the oppressors, because of the terrorists, they turn to the Lord of Israel too. So it's just, I mean,
and as our friend Roddy, I don't know if he texted this to you, but after my update on Sunday, he was sending me messages about that this highway from Egypt to Assyria, the King's Highway. And he said, it has I said, well, I don't think it's physical yet, but he made a very good point. Yeah, but there's a spiritual aspect to it. And he lives in Jerusalem, and he says, we have Egyptians and Assyrians and others coming here that have accepted the Lord from all along where that highway will be.
Yeah.
So he said the spiritual thing, he thinks, I would agree with him 100%, is starting to be built. So with regard to Bill's thing on Elam, are we on the cusp of that, something like that happening? Because Iran, this is crazy convergence of everything that's happening. So Iran everybody's withdrawn. I'm looking at pictures of the port at Tartus, which last week had Russian ships in them, unloading materials, Russian military ships, Russian naval ships. The port on satellite images is completely empty. Russia has withdrawn. That's one thing. Let me come back to that. But Iran now is sort of cornered. They've lost their whole proxy idea, supporting Hamas, supporting Hezbollah, supporting the Hezbollah and other militias in Syria, and the support that they've given to Shia militias in Iraq has almost with the exception of the Iraq component, it's almost completely evaporated. And I've seen estimates that Iran had given somewhere on the order of $45 billion to Hezbollah over the years and $50 billion to Assad. That's $100 billion that's just evaporated. And they're cornered. Also saw a report from a friend of mine in Israel today that it is now believed that Iran has enough fissile material to build 11 or 12 nuclear bombs. Now, praise the Lord that Israel took out their missile capabilities at Parchin just a few weeks back. But this is so crazy. All of this is happening. And I told you I was going to come back to something, and now I totally forgot what it was. But there's so much happening. Oh, I know what it is. So, I question sometimes whether Russia's involved in this Ezekiel 38-39. So I'll just grant you that it is. For the sake of argument, we love to do that. Just for the sake of argument, we'll assume that all that's true. Russia's left. What does it say in Ezekiel? I will draw you back. I'll put hooks in your jaw and draw you back. That has always seemed to me to indicate that whoever it was has left, and now they're being drugged back in for the fulfillment of these prophecies. Yep. The other part of this, one in Ezekiel 38-39, we know Turkey's involved. There's no doubt about that. And these groups are largely funded by Turkish drones, Turkey's training. And Turkey's been behind this, and Erdogan has his fingers all over this, and he's a Muslim Brotherhood type, perfectly aligned with these guys that have come in. But I'm shocked that the media, well, I'm not shocked. I'm shocked that the media would actually do what the worst of what you would expect and try to whitewash this Jelani guy, who's the head of the rebel group. He was in Al Qaeda. He was in ISIS. He was in Al Nusra. He's a radical jihadist. By the way, the Jelani name that he has is because he grew up and came from the Golan Heights. That's why he has that name, Jelani.
What a coincidence.
Right. And so Israel's done well. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about what Israel's doing. They have taken over. You've been there many times. I know I have. The no man's land there in the Golan Heights between Israel and Syria, where, if you go there, you would see these UN trucks driving around down there on sometimes. And apparently there were some Hezbollah, Iranian Shia militias that attacked the UN people, and Israel said, no, we're not going to allow that. They took over the no man's land. They also took over the Syrian part of Mount Hermon to control that. I don't think they've advanced very far into Syria, but Netanyahu said, listen, if you guys aren't going to attack us, we'll back off. But, for now, we're just going to be in charge of that area. And they're taking out everything that the Syrian military had. And so there were a lot of militias. There are also reports up in Aleppo, up in the north, these rebels were using tunnels to attack. So it seems to be all these rats use the same methodology. I'm just telling you, there's so much going on right now, it's almost impossible to organize it into coherent thoughts.
It is really amazing to just watch everything unfold. Caroline Johnson, I got to answer this question, John, and then go on. Says, could the passage Jeremiah 49 have already happened in times past, and Isaiah 17 be future? Absolutely, Caroline. I look at this, and I have a lot of colleagues that say Isaiah 17 happened in the past. I don't see it that way. I still think Isaiah 17 is future. Many will say the Jeremiah 49 passage, that already happened in the past. But that's fine. There's room for disagreement on the timing of some of those things. And, there's just difference of opinions. But as we see everything developing, we do know that all of these things ought to have us alert and understanding the dynamic of the times that we're in. And John, as you have mentioned with Ezekiel 38, God says, I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws and turn you around. I've always thought it implies Russia's pushing elsewhere. They've been pushing into Ukraine. But what's so remarkable is how you just pointed out, they've left the port. They're leaving. They're like, we're out of here. God says, I'm going to turn you around. But I still, folks, we need to be careful. Ezekiel 38, no matter who's out there that says it, is not going to happen tomorrow. There's no way. Israel has to be in peace and safety. They are definitely not in that place yet. So they could be there soon, John, with all of the things taking place with Russia and so forth. But also, John, when I look at it like this, Iran, you mentioned their nukes. It's like all Iran really has left is their nuclear capabilities. And you start thinking, it just throws, you start thinking, what's Iran going to do? They've been embarrassed beyond anybody else in everything that's been taking place, but it is just remarkable to see this.
Well, factor in one additional thing. We're 40 days away, assuming everything goes correctly, from a change at the top of the government in the United States. And there will be a new sheriff in town, whether you like him or not. And Trump in his prior administration, I didn't like these things, but was pushing the Abraham Accords, his vision for peace and prosperity. And at the same time that that's going on, the whole world, not a little bit of the world, the whole world. In fact, they voted 157 to 8 at the UN last week, including the United States, to push for a two-state solution. Well, and it's not really a two-state solution. It's really a third or fourth Palestinian Arab state, but well, it would be a 3 or 4 state solution by the time they get done with it, if it happens. And there's tremendous pressure for that to happen. And we're 40 days away from that, and Trump has said, he's told the guys in Gaza, those hostages better be free by the time I finish my oath of office. And I mean, are we at another time like you remember what happened when Reagan was coming in and Jimmy Carter looked weak and the U.S. looked weak, and Reagan, the hostages were in the air as Reagan's up there giving his inaugural address.
I remember that well. In fact, John, back on that day, I was working for a construction company, and my boss threw a big party. He was a big Reagan fan, and it was a hostage-freed party, and I got my picture taken. I was in the newspaper along with 10 other guys I was working with. I was sitting up in a tree, and it was a heck of a party. But I was only like, 18, 19, 20 years old. I think I was like in my 20s at that time, young 20s. But
I had just finished law school. I was just starting my first law firm in Indianapolis. So I remember the day. I just remember everybody was excited. That was back in the days where if you wanted to see something going on the TV, you sort of walk down the street to where the big department store was that had TVs in the window.
I remember
TVs that you could buy.
I remember those days, and I got a couple.
And they were those big tube things. You remember?
Yeah, they weighed about 1 million pounds, and they cost about $10,000 too. I have a couple of questions I got to get to. Karen Weiss says, "What do you think is going on with all the drones over New Jersey?" Sorry if it was already addressed. Karen, I'll tell you this. I'm going to do in my Today in Prophecy that I do every evening, 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'm going to address that tonight. Tell you this much. One of the congressmen said, there's an Iranian ship off the east coast of the United States. Those are Iranian drones. The Pentagon is denying it, but I'm going to deal with that one tonight. But here's a question. John, if you want to talk about the drones, you can. But also this one. Joshua Beresford says, how likely that Assad will ask Putin to nuke Damascus? That will elevate Putin in the eyes of the West, and he craves to be taken seriously.
But let me ask this a corollary question. Could Putin kind of come in? I mean, Putin's threatened nukes all over the place, right? He is. I mean, He's changed his nuclear doctrine, and some of it's vague and troubling. And there was just a thing, I didn't even have a chance. There was the International Institute for Security and Strategy or whatever, Security Studies or whatever, IISS, over in Manama last week. I haven't even had a chance to look at those videos yet. And all the globalists and everything that we're doing. The World Economic Forum is coming up. But with regard to this nuking thing, maybe the alternative is, just for the sake of argument, maybe Putin comes in here to act like a man of peace. Hey, I've got the idea. I know how to solve this problem.
He could. Okay, if we go back
because that would be the perfect head fake.
It would. If we go back just 2 weeks. So this whole thing with Syria didn't start until a week ago this weekend. So it hasn't even been, John, it's only been like 10.
It was November 28th, everything looked normal.
Okay, it's only been like, 10 or 11 days.
Right.
All right? So all you do is just go back 2 weeks, and Putin said, hey, the reason, Israel, you see Russian troops in southern Syria is because we want to make sure the terrorists don't get to you guys, and we want to make you guys feel comfortable so you can move refugees back home into the area of the Golan Heights, northern Israel.
Actually, there was an article in the Cradle, which is kind of a lefty, communist, pro-jihadi publication in the Middle East area. There's a guy named Pablo Escobar writes for them, and he's a crazy leftist, but he's interesting to read. He's entertaining. But they had picked up an article in Al Akbar newspaper in Lebanon that said Russia was doing that. We've got our forces here to help everybody out. And now they're all gone.
Yeah.
That was November 18th.
I find it so interesting how you said that Putin does a head fake and says, hey, we're going to be peace. And also remember a week ago as Putin, Erdogan, and whoever in Iran met and said, we got to get control on the Syria thing. So I don't know, to me, it's very interesting in the light of what's coming, what the Bible does tell us. Israel's going to be in a place of peace and safety. They're going to be assured that they're in a peaceful state with these troops that are coming from the north. They're going to be assured of it. Something's going to convince Israel we can believe at this time that they would lay down their arms and say, hey, we're good. So I don't know. I mean, it doesn't look like it now, but we know it's going to get there. By the way, Dora Termir says, can we ask questions? Dora, yes, we've been saying it for 41 minutes and 15 seconds now. So sorry you missed that. But we're almost out of time. So if you do have a question, get it in. But with John, with that, I mean, what do you make of that? Just the whole.
It's my phone, but Pete Gonzalez and Mondo Gonzalez are kind of blowing up my phone as we're talking with stuff about the drones in New Jersey and missing vials from laboratories. And
what do you say about the drones? What do you say about the drones in over New Jersey?
Right now, it's looking like it's an Iranian ship off the coast.
That is what I'm going to talk about this again tonight on Today in Prophecy, but
are they planning something for January 21st?
You know what? Listen, I can tell you different people don't really want Trump to be in power. I don't think Putin does because Putin can't run around like he is. But now he might be thinking, he's my only hope. Iran doesn't want him. The globalists definitely don't want him. I mean, the whole thing is just so bizarre to I mean, and then these drones
Trump
over New Jersey
thing going here too. The Trump, yeah. Well, did you see this? I mean, he goes to the dedication of Notre Dame, and I'm not kidding. I looked. Georgia Maloney is looking at Elon Musk like she wants to marry him, and Joe Biden's looking at Trump like, "I'm glad I voted for you."
So Georgia Maloney, though, isn't she heavily right?
Yeah, she's right. Yeah,
she's far.
Populist type.
Joe Biden, though, is the funniest one. She looked like she voted for Trump on election day. She had that look.
Yeah, that looks. When somebody put a little memo up, it said that look that a woman gives you when she's going to love you forever, or something like that. It's kind of humorous, but it's like they were fawning over Trump in Europe. This is the guy they couldn't stay. They booed him at Davos.
Yeah.
8 years ago or whatever.
You kind of makes you wonder if some of them think, hey, the things that we did to Trump, he's going to now do to us. Is it going to be revenge time? I do wonder if that's what a lot of them are thinking.
Well, and have you seen Bibi Netanyahu's testifying in a trial right now? Like, oh, Israel's at war, so let's bring the prime minister in and make him testify in a courtroom for days on end.
Yeah. Amazing to watch all of this. Okay, John, what are your...
If you wrote this in a movie script and you took it to a studio, they would say, we can't do that. Nobody would believe that anything like this could happen all at the same time. They would reject the script.
Yep.
Okay.
No kidding. What are your final thoughts for everybody?
Pay attention, stay close. There's, a lot of us are trying to keep updated on this. Pray for us as we try to make sense of all of this. it's going to be a very tumultuous. The next 45 days, at least, are going to be very tumultuous.
I would totally agree.
So what's the over under on how many pardons Biden is going to grant?
Yeah.
And what's the over under on how many executive orders Trump is going to overturn on day one, and how many pardons Trump is going to grant on day one? Because he said, I'm pardoning all those guys.
I mean, Biden, it was reported on, I think it was Gateway, that looking at Mark Milley pardoning him, but he hasn't been charged with anything. So maybe that's another question. How do they pardon somebody who hasn't been charged with anything yet?
Well, there's a couple reasons for that. The presidential pardon is it's very broad and it's absolute. Not really much you can do about it. So, to the extent that the Trump team has been saying we're going to investigate people for what they did to these people that were protesting the last election and have been served in prison, where the guy just sentenced to prison the other day for 10 years. By the way, Tom, there are people who were charged under a statute that the Supreme Court said without so clearly, you can't charge anybody under that statute. They're still in prison. One guy got released and they're trying to bring him back. The only thing he was convicted of was violating that statute. The Supreme Court said you can't charge him under that. The lawlessness that we've seen going on, but believe me, so the final parting shot is, look, if you're not woken up and paying attention to this stuff, you need to wake up right away and be patient with people. We're not going to all be on the same page. We're going to come out with some different conclusions. The other thing I'm amazed is I did not know, Tom, how many people in the world are foreign policy experts.
There's, including you and me.
Right. I mean, but we read a lot and everything.
No, I know. I was joking about that.
Everybody. I mean, I'm telling you, the volume of videos that have been put up about Syria over the last week is shocking. It's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, praise God, we have the Bible to keep us in line and informed. We know how it's going to end, but we don't know exactly how all of this is shaking down right now. We're watching it. It's fascinating to watch. And by the way, I got to get back to the drones for a minute, because Frank Ebel tells Dory McTiermere that no, we haven't spoken about the drones. We did speak about the drones about 3 different times. Listen, it appears right now the congressman out of New Jersey said, hey, it's from the Iranian ship. He has intel on it, and these are Iranian drones. Others say otherwise. And as you mentioned, John, who knows? This could all be part of what's supposed to be coming January 20 to throw everything off. That's fascinating to watch all of these things, but they're not UFOs. That's clear. So those people are saying...
I don't think they are, but...
you don't think they are what?
I don't think they're UFOs.
They're not UFOs.
I think they're we don't know what they are. I don't think they're extraterrestrial, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, that'd be great. And I'll be talking about tonight on Today in Prophecy, too. If anybody cares to watch that, that'd be great. Love to have you join us. John, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Tom.
I took you a little bit longer than I told you I would. I look forward to having you back ASAP, and because you're like a regular here.
I think we just need to maybe someday set up an open mic and start bringing people in for 12 hours in a row.
Well, 12 hours would be rough, but we could probably do it for a couple of hours easy.
We'll rotate.
Hey, you mentioned Pete Garcia and Mondo Gonzalez. We'll bring them in here while we're doing this.
Oh, by the way, early January, Patrick Wood, the first week in January, we're going to do another Prophecy Roundtable on technology, AI. And by the way, that thing's blowing up like crazy too. With all the developments there, stuff that is beast system type stuff coming together. It's insane.
It's amazing how fast this stuff's going on. It is just absolutely amazing to see the speed that everything is developing. Okay,
Thanks,
we'll be
Tom.
talking about these things again tomorrow, because they're going even faster. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye, everyone.